Hey guys, sorry for the absence. I've been pretty overwhelmed lately and struggling to finish writing scripts. I won't dwell on it, I just wanted to address that. This video is mainly going to be examining the kind of genre of Christians that like to use the Big Bang as a gotcha card in discussion of creation. My intent here isn't to say that all Christians are ignorant of these topics or that all of them believe it to be untrue, but to address the pretty common occurrence of Christians using it as a sort of whataboutism when arguing in favor of their beliefs. I will note, I am not a physicist. I just enjoy reading about these topics. I have done my best to try and be accurate in all the information presented when discussing this topic. However, if anything I say is incorrect, please feel free to let me know, and I'll be happy to add a correction in the description or of a pinned comment. With that out of the way, let's just get into it. It's not uncommon to have Christians use the Big Bang as a sort of whataboutism argument. Sentiments that what you believe is more absurd. You believe everything came from nothing at random. How is that any more sane than thinking God created it? It's somewhat of a more ignorant version of the Kalam cosmological argument, in my opinion. The Kalam cosmological argument follows three premises. Whatever begins to exist has a cause of its existence. The universe began to exist, therefore the universe has a cause of its existence. While the whataboutism often presented about the Big Bang is not as cohesive as this argument, it does rely on the same premise. Something can't come from nothing. Before even getting more into depth, I want to take a note that we don't actually know if there was nothing before the Big Bang, as well as the fact that the Kalam cosmological argument doesn't actually necessitate the existence of a god, let alone a personal one. The argument relies on an understanding that we have personally experienced. However, there are many hypotheses that the universe is infinite in both space and time, something I'll get back to in a moment. Essentially, we don't actually know that the universe, quote, began to exist at all, nor does a reality in which it did necessitate a personal god for this to have happened. However, this idea is still prevalent because it's, again, simple. Christianity, and often religion in general, strives to give comforting and simple answers to often complex and anxiety-inducing questions. Many aspects of both modern and extinct religions have existed to quell anxiety surrounding the unknown, and simple, straightforward answers are more effective in that task than one that requires nuance or complexities, especially whenever they fall into realms that require years of study to fully understand. Many Christians not only view the Big Bang as a creation event or an almost religious belief in its own right, but lump abiogenesis into it without saying so, using the Big Bang as a sort of catch-all term for how humans, the universe, and the planet came into existence. They essentially think atheists view the Big Bang in the way that they view Genesis. It's often either not acknowledged or not understood that not only is the Big Bang not a creation event in the way of Genesis, but it does not attempt to answer the question of where life came from. Their belief system answers all of those questions in one fell swoop, so there's often not any recognition that other ideas may not be attempting to do so as well. While not all people who dispute the Big Bang through the idea of something from nothing and randomness are biblical literalists, the Bible answers all of these questions about creation in one simple answer. It's all there, at one time, and is simple and straightforward. The only gaps in knowledge about our beginnings are those that are debated by theologians over technicalities or how literal they are, as opposed to actually having vast gaps of information. I think at this point it's useful to explain what the Big Bang actually is instead of just what it's not. While Christians often view it as a creation event, we don't ultimately know that to be the case. In simple terms, it's the expansion of space and time from a singularity. To our knowledge, the Big Bang did not actually create space-time, at least not in the way that Christians think of it as some intentional or purposeful action. It's also worth considering that, despite the name, the Big Bang was not an explosion in the way that we think of one. It was a rapid expansion that continues, to our knowledge, indefinitely. This expansion is also accelerating instead of decelerating like an explosion would. In a sense, the Big Bang is still happening. While there's a variety of opinions from physicists on if there was a pre-Big Bang, we don't ultimately have an answer to this question. There's a slew of hypotheses on what its cause was, from a quantum event to a cycle of infinitely repeating big crunches in which the universe will expand and repeatedly collapse on itself. There's more out there hypotheses, such as a white hole or multiverse as well, and we simply don't know which one it is, if any. It's also worth pointing out that the concept of the Big Bang in itself, as in a rapid expansion of space-time from a singularity, is not widely disputed. While there are gaps in knowledge, especially surrounding its origin, the fact that the universe is expanding from a singularity is not one of them. There are a plethora of ways this has been proven through both mathematics, something I am not skilled in and will leave there, as well as observable phenomenon. The most glaring and well-known example of this is the CMBR, or cosmic microwave background radiation, a sort of glow that's significantly uniform throughout the observable universe. The cosmological model of the Big Bang hypothesized that before the universe cooled down to allow for the formation of hydrogen, that there was a fog of plasma made up of subatomic particles. Essentially, the CMBR is the footprint of this early universe, one that lines up with our expectations of what an early universe should look like according to Big Bang theory. Alongside this, we can observe the expansion of the universe. This is referred to as Hubble's law, the observation that the farther away a galaxy is from the Earth, the faster it is moving away from us in proportion to its distance. This speed is measured through its redshift, or the rate at which light is emitted from it. Essentially, these observations, among others, have made it evident that the universe is expanding and that this expansion is accelerating. Coming back to Christianity, there is often an attitude that an unproven but complete answer is better than a proven but incomplete one. Well, of course, many Christians would argue that their beliefs are substantiated, though with varying levels of sophistication, from "look how pretty the sunset is," though, to complex apologetics. These arguments start with an inability or even fear to acknowledge unknown or lack of ultimate purpose, and end with logic-based arguments like the Kalam cosmological argument, which follows a series of premises to a conclusion, however does not rely on observable or measurable data. This distrust in gaps of knowledge isn't only in reference to Big Bang cosmology, but also in the area of evolution. It's a common sentiment, especially from young Earth creationists, to claim that there are missing links, to yell, "Where are the transitional fossils?" The idea of a transitional species is a bit of a misleading one, as evolution is gradual with no ultimate end product or no distinct start point for one species. A transitional species is generally described as a halfway point or some point in between, an ancestor that is distinctly different from modern animals. Think Australopithecus as the starting point, Homo erectus as transitional, and Homo sapiens as a quote-unquote end point. Regardless of that fact, however, because evolution is so gradual, there's always room to say where's the transitional species, even when finding so-called transitional species. We have more than enough data to conclude that evolution is a fact, but there's a fundamental difference in worldview here that becomes an issue. Again, Christianity wraps everything up in a neat, simple bow. It is supposedly infallible and in no need of further exploration outside of what's given. Fundamentalist Christians are not primed to understand that gaps do not mean unproven or untrue. We will never be able to find a fossil, let alone a complete one, for every critter to ever exist on Earth. Fossils were not created by humans to explain a gnawing question like religion was. They are natural occurrences that we can use to deduce and understand natural history. In relation to how much life has ever existed on Earth, fossils are proportionally rare. There's a vast amount of factors that lead to their existence, and some species are significantly less likely to become fossilized. The body composition, natural habitat, and climatic conditions of the Earth at the time that they lived all play a role. Soft-bodied animals are much less likely to fossilize, as are animals who lived in temperate or wet climates. Not even mentioning that even with animals that did live in climates that were perfect for fossilization, that animal is much more likely to decay or be eaten than it is to fossilize. Despite all this, we have an overwhelming amount of fossils and preserved animals to prove evolution is true. But this difference in perspective and values creates a barrier to being able to accept these things as facts. I guess ultimately that difference in perspective is the crux of this video. Christians who use the Big Bang or transitional fossils as a basis to deny science have been taught not to comprehend complexity. It's not uncommon for complexity itself to be used as a reason God must exist, point in case to the watchmaker argument. Complexity can only be explained through simplicity. If it is complex, it is outside their scope of understanding and therefore outside possibility. Not because Christians who use these arguments are stupid or that people like myself or other atheists are just better than them, but because Christianity teaches you to avoid doubt and critical thought. To consider complexity as anything other than a marvel of God opens a door to questioning God as a whole. Much of Christian apologetics is focused on reconciling this idea of complexity through simple and straightforward arguments that rely on seemingly common sense premises, as discussed before with the Kalam cosmological argument. Of course, there are Christians who believe in the Big Bang and evolution and in generally accepted scientific facts. But these people also don't tend to be the ones using things like the watchmaker argument. And in the wider history of Christianity, this is generally a new group of people. While the Catholic Church and other religious institutions have supported scientific exploration throughout history, they always shut down the second one of those discoveries challenges their ideas, and penalize those responsible, something that often would silence others trying to explore similar ideas that also countered the teachings of the Church. Well, I think it's observably untrue to say that Christianity and science are incompatible, at least in the sense that you cannot be Christian and also believe in modern science. The actual church itself and the foundational idea of blind faith are incompatible with accurate scientific understandings of the world, in my opinion. Honestly, most Christians and religious folks in general cherry pick, making it more than possible for people to reconcile both of these ideas. But the concept, the religion as a whole, one that values simple and unproven but complete answers, and one that demonizes doubt and critical thought while upholding blind faith, is something that hinders people to even understand these concepts outside of the framework of their own pre-existing indoctrination. Something that compels people to believe the Big Bang is just the atheist genesis, that having more to learn means science is actually less supported than their own flawed mythology. If you are one of the people who uses these arguments from complexity, I would compel you to examine your own internal biases, to not assume that the claims of others are attempting to solve the same problems as your own beliefs, and to not assume that the intentions of making those claims are the same as your own. That's all I got today. If you like my content and want to support it, please consider subscribing or checking out my Ko-fi in the description. Thanks for watching. Ha det.
The children think too much, they've hardly a fear of God, always asking questions they should only wish away.